Okay. Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, whoops, sorry. Where's my video? There we go. Okay.
Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, June 21st, 2022 Board of Supervisors meeting. At this time, we'll be calling to order for closed session items, and I'll have the clerk read them out, as well as report out from 6:14.
Closed session for today, Tuesday, June 21st. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D1, conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation, County of Calaveras versus Tuscarora Ranches Limited Partnership et al., Calaveras County Superior Court case number 20CV45113. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code 54956. .9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation. And report out? Okay.
Yeah, and report out.
Report out of closed session from June 14th, 2022. Item 1, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, conference with County Designated Labor Negotiator Nick Marvin regarding existing and following employee organization, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association, CCPSEA. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, conference with County Designated Labor Negotiators Krista Von Lotta and Judy Hawkins regarding the following employee organizations: Service Employees International Union, SEIU, Local 1021, Sheriff's Management Unit, SMU, Calaveras County Public Safety Employees Association, CCPSEA, Deputy Sheriff's Association, DSA, Calaveras Management Union, Calaveras Supervisors Union, Unrepresented Employees. Board action, all 3 items, no reportable action taken. And there's no public comment.
Okay, I'm not seeing any in the room. At this time, we'll convene in a closed session and return for regular agenda later this morning. Thank you. Good morning, and welcome back to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you for the patience. At this time, if we could please stand for the pledge. So we do have Supervisor Garamendi with us. He will be on Zoom today joining, and we will be taking roll call votes as a reminder to not only myself, but the board. For closed session, we will be going back into closed session after the regular agenda. There is nothing to report out at this time. We'll report out at the next meeting. With that, we'll move on to staff announcements, and I believe we have Mr. Osborne. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I just wanted to provide a quick update in regards to a partnership that we have developed with Hold Your Horses. They're a Type 1 animal evacuation team, and I'm proud and happy to announce after some significant work that we have entered into an agreement with them where they have agreed to come and help us during disasters to supplement our emergency services basis to provide evacuation and management of animals. So just a little update, that was, it's been about a year in the process, and very proud to announce that we have strengthened our ability to evacuate animals here in the county. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is there any other staff updates? I'm not seeing them in the room. Double checking with the clerk online. No? Okay.
No, there isn't.
So with that, we'll move on to the general public comment. This is any item of interest to the public that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas. They may be addressed during the public comment time. Is there any public comment? And we do have one. Just a reminder, there is a light on the podium that will give you your time. Go ahead. Good morning.
Good morning, members of the board. Hope you're feeling well. My name is Joel Pitto. I am the owner of the Green Mine property, and that may be coming to an end soon. But I'm here today. Well, first, I see Director Packinger in the audience, and as I criticized his department many times here in front of the board, I'd like to say he solved the problem on Green Mine Road, did a heck of a good job, up to the highest standards that heavy trucks can drive on it without caving it in, and I appreciate that. I'm here today, however, as I participated in your cannabis program and was rejected. I still disagree with the rejection, but I gave it my shot. It was my desire at the time to become legal and in compliance with the state laws. And I paid for 2 permits, beginning with $2,500 payments to the State Water Quality Control Board, times 2. And when rejected, they would not refund the money. They never had to go to efforts on my part. And to add insult to injury, the next year I got a bill for another $5,000 from a credit collection bureau who damaged my credit severely. I did not apply for the next year. There was no reason for them to stick a credit agency on me. But I've been working with them on the mine, the same agency, and brought up the subject of, hey, you guys owe me some money. And I've been working with a lady named Danielle Tiopan, and they're very hesitant to give money back, although some of your people in 2018 18 were given refunds, but only a selective group. Everyone that has paid into that and did not receive the services should get their money back. And I would like to be directed to which officer in the county could help with that effort. I don't want to have to take it to higher levels and cause ripples for others. Please help. It's $5,000 I need. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment on Zoom?
Yes, we have Beth Deanne.
Hello, this is Beth Dean. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi.
We'll let you know when the time is up. Wait, Stacy?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Okay, you're good. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Beth Dean. I own a house in the Sky High neighborhood of near Bear Valley, up in the mountains. And I am calling in to encourage the board to take action to enforce the requirements that apply to folks that own homes up there. Basically, we have a situation where the Olson residence is holding corporate events. I think you guys may be aware of this. I'm hoping you're aware of it. And there's been over a dozen instances where they've basically used their house to hold very profit-motivated events. The problem with this is it's very noisy. They use loudspeakers to have sales meetings outside. It has excessive traffic, and it's just not sort of conducive to a quiet residential neighborhood. They have big fires, which I always question whether it's safe or not. They're outdoors until late at night, often after midnight. It's a very impactful use that is just not compatible. So I'm not sure what the next step is with the county, but I would encourage all of the board members to really think about, taking action on this, because it's just not something that's getting fixed very quickly. So that's it. Thank you for your time and appreciate your efforts to make this a peaceful neighborhood.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment online?
Yes.
Okay.
Scott?
Yes. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Scott Schriefer, and like Beth, I am a resident of Sky High Ranch. We're on the border of Calaveras County, bordering Alpine County, up on Highway 4. I am the owner of lot number 55. Expand a little bit on Beth's concerns. The Olson family owns 3 parcels. The main residence is at 751 Edmont Road. The community is zoned single-family residential, and our CC&R also complement that county zoning requirement. The building construction took 3 years, incredibly disruptive, and now there have been 13 corporate retreat events in the last 4 years since the construction has been completed. So the community has been impacted for 7 total years. Of the 13 events that have been hosted, the largest event had over 100 people. They regularly bring in small buses to transport them into the community. They rent off-road ATVs, race them around the community. They also have cars, sometimes in excess of 50 cars on property. There's excessive light shed. They have excessive lights that light the property up. The traffic is extremely horrible when they do host events. The family and the employees of the family that run corporate events have threatened violence, harassment, intimidation, have used blackmail, and bring in event security not to protect themselves, but to control the homeowners that are documenting these events. There have been upwards of 35 letters written to the county over the last 4 years regarding the troubles that we're having. There was a petition signed by 57 property owners that went to the Honorable Marita Way. She also attended the largest community that ever took place in the community regarding the Olsons, and I think she can attest to the emotional trauma that some of the people have experienced. The latest event occurred just 2 weeks ago, and this is one of several that have occurred after a cease and desist order was issued by the county and by the Homeowners Association. So they continue to host these events. Along with the corporate use, the construction's been out of compliance, and the grading of the entire property has been caused to shed off of their property and is actually flooding other properties. We currently have a documentation that's 262 pages long, where we have witness testimony from neighbors, and we also have substantial incriminating attendees themselves. And we would like to formally request to get on a future agenda for the Board of Supervisors so that we can have a more extensive discussion regarding these matters. I thank you very much, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Clerk. Is there any other public comment?
There is no further, oh, I'm sorry, yes, there is.
Okay.
Neil?
This is Neil. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I am also have a cabin in Sky High Ranch, and I'm 2 properties down from the Olson residence. And I concur with what Beth and Scott have communicated to you. We purchased that property to be up in the beautiful Sierras with the peace and quiet that it offers us. A number of years ago, which Scott has defined, construction began. They ran over construction hours. They were noisy. It took a long time. We were tolerant of that. Then they started holding corporate events, much of which has been documented. And this is rated residential, single family, and they're having quite sizable groups continue to come to this property for these events, and this is wrong. The county has been aware of this for several years, and up to this point, I've seen very little to no action on the part of the county. If they have taken action, I'm not aware of it, and I would thank them if they have taken action, but I haven't seen this up to this point. My reason for being on the Zoom meeting is to ask the county to take the action that's required to move this property back into compliance with county ordinances. If they do this, I think everything would clear up. However, this has been going on for several years, and I haven't seen a whole lot happening on the side of the county. So, again, I encourage the county to address this issue as quickly as they can and solve this problem. I've seen people crying during these events because they can't tolerate what's going on. And this is not good for our mental health. This is not good for what this neighborhood is meant to be. So with that, thank you for listening to my comments.
Thank you. Clerk, are there any other online comments?
There's no further online comments.
Okay. And seeing none in the room, we'll move on to consent agenda. But before I do that, I think we have some items that need to be addressed on the overall agenda. So I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair because he has a comment on the agenda.
Yeah, I do, on the regular agenda. I'm going to pull item 22 off this agenda today and move it to the July 12th meeting. I will have more information at that time.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Is there any other board member or staff that wishes to make a comment on the overall agenda before I move into consent? Seeing none, I move on to consent agenda. There are multiple consent agenda items. Is there any board member that wishes to pull an item? I'm not seeing anything from Supervisor Garamendi. Is there any staff?
Well, I might want to pull something from the HSS
Okay.
consent, just to have Tony speak. We haven't heard her or seen her. She's saying no. Okay, fine, I won't.
Okay. Okay, so there's no, just to clarify, there's no consent item being pulled. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We're going to have to do a roll call, so clerk, can we do the roll call, please?
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
That passes 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have regular agenda item, number 20, clerk.
Item 20, Agreement, Public Works, authorize the board chair to execute Amendment 5 to an agreement with Doken Engineering, Inc., an amount not to exceed $4,456,290.82 for the term of September 1, 2018 through December 31, 2023.
Mr. Packinger,
Good morning.
good morning.
The amendment before you is to cover the additional expenses for environmental work that is occurring at the Wagon Trail project. There's an extensive amount of work that needs to be done, and this amendment, we hope, should cover those costs.
Is there any questions by the board on this item? Seeing none, is there any public comment?
There is no online public comment.
Okay, and there is no comment in the room. With that, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there a motion to approve agenda item number 20?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please, for vote.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Aye.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Next, we have regular agenda item number 21. At this time, I will turn it over to the clerk to read out.
Item 21, action item, economic and community development. Receive a presentation regarding the Central Sierra Broadband Roadmap Final Report and the Golden State Connect Authority activities, and provide direction on next steps, including but not limited to whether to initiate an invitation to negotiate program with internet service providers.
That, I believe we have Ms. Galino and Ms. Cruz.
We have a few people today.
Yeah, we've had quite a few. So who's coming online? Okay, there you are. Good morning.
We have Diane Cruz, she's with Neo Connect. She was a consultant that was hired through the Central Sierra Economic Development District. Tuolumne County is the lead to provide the broadband roadmap, which you saw a draft of in December, and now we're here to provide the final report back. And then following that, I have Barbara Hayes from RCRC to do part 2 of the presentation today.
Great, thank you. So I will turn it over to you, Diane.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I will go ahead and share my screen. I have a couple of slides that I'd like to share with you. Okay, let me get this ready to go. Okay, great. Kathy, thank you for the introduction. My name is Diane Cruz, and I am with NeoConnect. We're a broadband consulting firm that works with local municipalities on broadband planning, design, engineering, and implementation. And I just want to say that this is an excellent time to be doing this work, as there is a lot of funding that has been made in response to the pandemic for broadband infrastructure. And so the timing of putting together your roadmap with the funding that's coming available is perfectly timed. So let me go through our findings in terms of the current broadband landscape in the Central Sierra region. We'll talk about where investment is planned to be made and what we are suggesting additional investment could be made in what's referred to as middle mile investment. And middle mile is essentially fiber optic infrastructure that is connecting cities and towns and essentially the supply for internet services. Putting in middle mile investment reduces the cost for service providers, and that provides a potential investment for them to invest into your communities for last mile services. Last mile investment simply refers to fiber that is built to all of the homes and businesses and anchor institutions. So, and then we'll talk about funding and what's available and aligning your needs with the funding. So this is the current landscape in terms of current broadband services. In California, the definition to be served with broadband is at 10 megabits per second in download speeds and 1 megabits per second in upload speeds. And so if we look at Calaveras County, we identified all of the parcels that have a building located on it, and so that's the first column to the left. And there are approximately 6,900 homes that do not have service or have less than 10 by 1 service. And to give you an idea of what that means, most communities are targeting services that are 1,000 by 1,000 megabits per second, or at a minimum 100 by 20 megabits per second. And so 18% have less than 10 by 1, and 82% meet the 25 by 3 standard, 73% meet 100 by 20, and 27%, so it's 73% minus 100 is 27% would be eligible for grants that are targeting services of at least a minimum of 100 by 20. This is a map of the 5-county region that shows the areas that are unserved. So according to the California PUC, the areas that are shown in purple are served with 10 by 1. The areas that are in tan are not served. So those are the areas that we want to focus potential investment to at least get those people that do not have service in the community. We did conduct a survey in this process, and we received...
ask questions during this?
I'm sorry, Diane.
Will you be willing to take a question on the last slide, Diane?
Yes, absolutely. I'll be taking a bunch of questions as soon as I'm done. I'll try to wrap this up in about 10 minutes so that we have plenty of time for questions.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we did conduct a survey during the study, and just under 1,000 people provided responses to the survey. And just very quickly, some of the takeaways from the survey are 36% of the survey respondents stated they either have a home-based business or they're planning to start one. 67% of the respondents had someone working from home during the pandemic, and 76% said that the internet hurt their ability to work from home. Only 13% of the respondents said that their internet was fast enough. There's a number of other takeaways that are included in the report. We felt that these were the highlights of the results. The other important pieces are what would people sign up for, and it sort of gives us an idea of how price sensitive people are. 45% of the respondents said they would choose the very best, 1,000 by 1,000 megabits per second or a gig service for $100 to $150 a month. And 32% said that they would sign up for 250 meg. So that's important information to share with the service providers as they are planning potentially to co-invest in their communities. There we go. The state has already set aside through their ARPA funds approximately $6 billion for broadband, and they've allocated that $6 billion in the following manner. $3.25 billion will be available for middle mile infrastructure, and I'm going to talk about the middle mile routes that the state has already planned. $2 billion will be available in last mile services. $700 million will be set aside for a loan loss reserve. We did create a broadband czar, and something that Barbara is going to be talking about. There's an opportunity that's available now. It's the local agency technical assistance grant. Each local government can apply up to $500,000 each in planning and technical support to get your projects even further shovel ready. Here's a map of what is being proposed in terms of middle mile investment. So the blue lines that we're showing are the lines that are already existing that are owned by Scenic. Scenic invested in fiber during the 2010 American stimulus program, and they built fiber to schools and libraries throughout the region. And the state of California is planning to invest in middle mile infrastructure, those lines that are shown in pink. And as we are looking at potentially closing out services or closing out loops so that you can provide further redundancy to your region, we took the initial investment and we expanded that, and we are showing investment that we are recommending to you in green. And so these are fiber lines that we're recommending that would provide further resiliency and redundancy in the region. And then with middle mile infrastructure, we also recommend putting in what's referred to as carrier neutral locations or carrier grade data centers, where government entities, anchor institutions, and more importantly, internet service providers can co-locate their equipment to then access middle infrastructure and access the internet supply if you know that are located in large metropolitan areas. So these green dots are areas that we're recommending putting in a carrier neutral location that can regenerate the fiber signal, but then more importantly provide a data center for ISPs to co-locate their equipment. We put together the estimated capital costs for this middle mile infrastructure build, and we put together costs for what the California middle mile project build is going to cost. And these are these top lines representing the pink lines that the state of California is planning to build. We also wanted to show one of the policies that we're recommending is anytime there's work being done in the public right-of-way, especially along key routes or highways or major roads, we are recommending that you put in a shadow conduit or just an additional conduit that can be used later for fiber. And so we are providing the cost of what it would be to put in shadow conduit while this fiber is being built to show what the potential savings would be and how impactful it is to put forward a shadow conduit policy. The second chart is the capital costs to build the green lines that we're recommending. In Calaveras County, it's just over $10 million to build the additional routes. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is it's not necessarily Calaveras' responsibility, if you will, to pay for that. I think that you could put together partnerships with PG&E, with Caltrans, with the ISPs, with other stakeholders in the region to potentially build out further middle infrastructure. And so now we get into last mile investment, and last mile is essentially bringing fiber all the way to the home and to the business or to anchor institutions. And these red dots are the households that have a building located on them. And again, you can see the areas that are unserved are shown in tan, and then the areas that are served with 10 by 1 are showing in purple. Now, one thing I want to state about that is that 10 by 1 is a really low benchmark. You definitely want to shoot higher. All of the grant programs are requiring that the infrastructure being put in is capable of 100 by 20. And so there's probably areas that are shown in purple that are eligible for grant funding. And the state of California is doing some additional mapping exercises that will help fill in some of the gaps, if you will, or fill in the disparity between unserved in the tan and what the benchmark is of 100 by 20. We do put together estimates for last mile services, and one thing I want you to not get caught up on is we can change the major assumptions very easily in our construction estimates. It's something that we can put together in just a couple of hours if we want to change the major assumptions of aerial versus underground construction. Many counties that are especially threatened with fire are putting their utilities underground and partnering with PGE and other utility providers to do the same. So we put together worst case estimates based upon 100% underground construction or nearly 100% underground construction. And one of the things that make these costs very high is that we're in a very rocky and undulating terrain that drives up the costs. And so the construction costs also reflect the current unit prices that we're seeing. Just like every industry, we're seeing inflated prices for labor and materials. So these are worst case scenario, if you will. So our first set of estimates that I'll be showing you is 100% underground construction. We also ran the estimates based upon 95% aerial construction and 5% underground. That's resulting in 70% capital cost savings. A 50-50 split results in about 45% capital cost savings. So that's the highest driver, if you will, of your capital cost for fiber builds. Your trade-off of aerial versus underground is that with aerial construction or using utility poles, there are typically operating expenses that are associated with that, and those are in the form of pole attachment fees. And so our next steps that we're recommending is that you sit down and meet with the service providers in the area, see if you can put together some public-private partnerships, some agreements to co-invest in infrastructure, and then a conversation will be with them. Can we absorb these pole attachment fees? Do we want to deploy aerial construction in some of these routes? But that's something that could come along at the next stage, if you will. So we split the county into each district, and we provided cost estimates for each district. Each district was further broken into the areas that are unserved or do not have 10 by 1, and those that are served that do have 10 by 1. So for example, these first two columns are District 1, the unserved parcels, and District 1, the served parcels. So there are 1,354 unserved parcels in District 1. And here's our plant miles, our major assumptions. This next density of household per mile, that's a really key number to look at. There's 29 homes per mile. When you get into some of the lower numbers, these are harder to build out, more expensive to build out. It's harder to make the business case work. So we definitely want to take a look at these and come up with a strategy to serve the even more difficult areas to serve. We assumed a 45% take rate, meaning 45% of people that had the ability to sign up for service would sign up for service. And then here's the other assumptions that we put together. And then these are the capital costs for each of those various scenarios. So again, for District 1, for the unserved areas, it's about $15 million to build fiber to every home and business in that district that's unserved. District 2 is a huge district, and we further broke down District 2. I'll talk about that in a second. District 3, there's 14 million that could be spent. District 4, 6 million. In District 5, about 1.2 million to build fiber to each home and business within the districts that are unserved. This next slide goes through District 2. We broke those into smaller areas and provide, smaller bite-sized pieces, if you will, to build out. And then here are the results for District 2. One thing that we want to say is these numbers seem really high, but also keep in mind that there's a lot of funding that's available. And there's a lot of funding that would be available to your county because about a third of your parcels are unserved. So let's talk about the funding. So there's over $400 billion that has been set aside for broadband funding. And that the first stage of that was through the American Rescue Plan Act. The second part of that is through the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. So the ARPA, local COVID relief funding, that was allocated on a per capita basis to counties and cities and to the state, that's underway. There is a grant that is available through the NTIA for middle mile infrastructure. There's $1 billion. It requires a 30% match. And the due date for that grant is September 30th. And so those green routes that we recommended, that might be a good opportunity for you to apply for grant funding through either the state or the NTIA program to fund that middle mile infrastructure build. There's a capital projects fund that's available through ARPA, and the state of California is getting an additional minimum $540 million. The rules and deadlines for that will be released this year. They haven't been released yet, but we will see those before the end of this year. I mentioned the local agency technical assistant grant. That's available now or soon to be released in terms of the rules and deadlines. That's an additional $500,000 that each local government can apply for further planning and technical support. And then coming up next year, there's, as part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, there's what's referred to as the BEAD program. That will be administered through the state, and one of the first efforts will be to improve some of the mapping of broadband services, so that you can use more accurate mapping to apply for last mile grants. And the state of California will receive a minimum of $100 million through that program. And those rules will be announced sometime next year. So what we're recommending, and I'll turn this over to questions in a second, we're recommending that you do a formal engagement with the service providers, something like an invitation to negotiate or an RFI process. We like to call it an invitation to negotiate process because it shows that you're serious, that you want to put together a public-private partnership with the service providers. It's essentially an invitation for them to co-invest in broadband infrastructure, to co-apply for grant funding, and to put together a plan to address the unserved areas. We've done this very successfully in other counties. Recently, we did a program in Stearns County, Minnesota. They are planning to enter into an agreement with about 5 service providers. The county is investing $16 million. The service providers are investing $40 million, and they're going to apply for grant funding to get the remainder of the funding to build up to every home in county, or every home and business within the county. We also suggest that you continue to work with PG&E on some potential joint builds. They are burying their infrastructure as fire mitigation, and there may be an opportunity to work with them to co-invest with them on especially the key routes throughout the county. Barbara Hayes is going to talk in a minute here about RCRC and some of the regional efforts that are underway. We encourage you to continue working with them on a much larger scale, the 38 county or so regional effort. Some of the counties are putting together an environmental impact study ahead of some of the grant funding. This is often a timely issue in that, as an example, we applied for grant funding for El Dorado County They received a conditional grant based upon the environmental impact study. Took us about a year to finish that piece, and now we can start building. So the environmental impact study will help streamline some of the construction process and get your projects so that they're ready to go. And then we also recommend that you identify your shovel-ready projects. You engage with the service providers as partners, and then to get your projects even more shovel-ready, that you engage in the final design and engineering of, say, your top 10 projects, so that you can further refine how you will build these networks. Will you be using aerial construction, underground construction, and that way we can fine-tune the capital costs for building out fiber to the home infrastructure. So with that, I will open it up for questions.
I believe Supervisor Stopper had a question.
Yes, going back to, let's see, our current broadband landscape and also the last mile investment, Calaveras County. When we get that information on served areas, those served areas are generally within a census blocks provided to you by CPUC. And so you color those areas in as served, but not every person in that area is necessarily served. So as we move on in the future, we need to refine that map even more so, because you know as well as I do, with that type of mapping and putting that information together without reaching out to each individual household, we're going to have to refine these numbers because they are significantly off.
Right, I agree with you. So some of the challenges with the maps, the current maps that we have, is the service providers self-report their service availability, and it's based upon advertised speeds. And so we know that there's a gap between advertised speeds and actual speeds. So that's one of the issues. The other issue is, you're absolutely right, it's reported on a census block basis. And if one household is served in that census block, the service providers can state that all of the addresses are served. So it really messes up the maps. It's an industry-wide conversation that we all are having. And thankfully, there's money that's been set aside to try to improve the mapping. And the grant programs are written in such a way that there's a lot of flexibility that you can show that the area is unserved with other data in addition to the maps that are provided through the FCC or the PUC.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's why that potential $500 million is available for refining that map later on through a grant process, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And the state is also working on that effort as well.
Are there any other board questions? Supervisor Callaway?
On the $400 million broadband funding slide, excuse me, it talks about a 30% match. Is that match supposed to be from the county, or where does that come from?
It would be from the applicant. And so you could partner on that grant application, perhaps with PG&E or with a service provider, or it could come from the county. But the match would come from the applicant.
I mean, I'm not sure what's, excuse me, has been happening now, but in the years I've worked with the providers in the Ebbets Pass corridor, they have not been willing to extend the middle mile. They say there is no return on investment.
Same here.
So I'm trying to match what I'm hearing them say with a county that can't make a 30% match.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I think the service providers typically shy away from middle mile investment. They absolutely need middle mile fiber so that they can access internet supply, and it reduces a lot of their capital costs to potentially build out last mile services. So I think it's a really important investment. The good news is that the state of California is already planning to invest in Calaveras County, and, this middle mile investment, what we're recommending, that may be a long-term play. It may be over the next 10 years that this network gets built. The good news is that the state of California is planning to invest in middle mile infrastructure now, and so there will be ways to get to internet supply and ways of reducing that cost. And then what we're recommending would make your middle mile infrastructure even more resilient, providing multiple paths in and out of areas. If there's a fiber cut or something happens, there's a fire, there's a rock slide, that you have other paths out of the region for middle mile infrastructure. But they're typically longer-term investments, and maybe your partners might be other entities like PG&E or other, potential stakeholders.
I can address, I know PG&E has a commitment to underground in the Ebbets Pass corridor, which is, that I represent in Highway 4. They're doing the pole replacement. They are not, every rural community wants the undergrounding. But in place of their doing that, they're doing pole replacement.
Okay.
And that's what I see happening, at least in my district, which is District 3. So I don't see a partnership with them in terms of undergrounding. So I don't see a partnership with them in undergrounding. I don't see any service providers willing to extend the middle mile. But we, all of us, would like it extended. So how do we work through that quagmire?
So maybe another opportunity might be to partner with PG&E as they're replacing their poles. I know that one of the things that PG&E is working on is improving their SCADA system, or their power operations and management system. So one of the issues is that they were not able to remotely turn off energized or powered lines, and that was further exacerbating fires in other areas of California. So they are most likely building fiber to make their power system smarter and allow them to better manage their power operations. And so there may still be an opportunity, even if they're not underground, putting fiber infrastructure underground, there may be an opportunity to partner with them on a joint build and to build fiber to their substations and to build fiber to their SCADA systems out in the field. So, that may be another opportunity to discuss with PG&E.
Well, I'm sorry, I have a frog in my throat. The slide that says last mile estimates, the last one to me is very poignant, and it said service providers may want to build out. I have yet to see in a rural area where they want to do it. So if there are ways that we could partner with them, that we could bring them to the table, is the state willing to pay for the middle mile that would then force them to come? I guess I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Any other supervisor, Stopper? No? Okay. If there's no other supervisor questions for this presentation, are there any public questions before we move on to the next presentation, so we don't doesn't get confusing? Is there any public online? No?
I don't see any online.
Okay, and there's no questions in here, staff, any questions? None? Okay, thank you, Diane. We'll move it on to the next presentation.
Thank you.
Kathy.
Can we take like 5 minutes so I can set up for part 2?
Absolutely. We will take a 5-minute break for setup. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Galina.
Hang on just a sec. Okay, how's that? Can you hear me? Awesome. So Kathy Galino, Economic and Community Development Director. Okay, am I back on? All right. And she's here today to give part 2 of our presentation regarding the Calaveras County broadband strategy and some action items to move forward. So we'll have that towards the end of the presentation. And with that, I'll give it to Barbara.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me today. This is an exciting time and an exciting topic to talk about. So I wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit and start broad about RCRC. So my name is Barbara Hayes. I'm the Chief Economic Development Officer. Broadband czar is a big word, or a big title, but I am leading the broadband efforts for RCRC, which is the Rural County Representatives of California. And by way of background, you can see there on the slide, RCRC represents 39 rural counties across California. And I will say your representative on our board is comprised of elected supervisors from each of those member counties, and Supervisor Garamendi sits on that board on your behalf. So RCRC was started as an advocacy organization in the 1970s and has broadened its scope over the years to an entity that also, in addition to a very robust legislative and regulatory advocacy effort, also includes some innovative programs that benefit our member counties. And we deliver those programs through a number of affiliate entities, and that will lead to the next slide, please, Kathy. I wanted to talk today under the banner of broadband about one such affiliate entity that was formed last December. It's called Golden State Connect Authority, and the aforementioned Calaveras County Supervisor, Supervisor Garamendi, sits as chair of this entity. It's comprised at present of 38 member counties, and you can see there's the reference to Solano County. Solano County joined RCRC just a couple of months ago, and on May 24th there took action at their board level to also join Golden State Connect Authority. And barring any unforeseen circumstances, this Friday at the Golden State Connect Authority board meeting, Solano will be welcomed as the 39th member county of Golden State Connect. So the RCRC and Golden State Connect Authority membership mirror each other. There on the map, you can see the area. Golden State Connect Authority, our program of work is focused in 3 core areas as approved by the board. And I just want to touch briefly on each of the 3 and really kind of land on the 3rd one there for purposes of this discussion. So the first bullet point that you see there is broadband strategic planning. We did, under the banner, again, of RCRC, submitted a grant to the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration last September, on September 3rd to be exact, for the purposes of requesting money under an allocation that EDA, the Economic Development Administration, received through the Rescue Plan Act for purposes of developing broadband strategic plans at the countywide level for all of those member counties, RCRC member counties, that opted into the grant. So Calaveras was one of those counties that opted into the grant, and I'm happy. I mean, it's bittersweet. We haven't received final approval on that grant, and here we are nearly 9 months down the road, a lot longer than we would have anticipated and did anticipate before we have received final approval. But that being said, we did on March 16th of this year receive conditional approval for the grant. And just to give you kind of what that means is for the $500 million program for which we applied under at EDA, that EDA received $4 billion in program applications. So we're feeling very lucky that ours was one that was included in that conditional approval process. Quite literally, we should receive approval at any moment on that grant application. The second bullet there is you see capacity building and information sharing. That really goes to building out our website, which we have done. It's goldenstateconnect.org. There's a resource page on there, and there are good resources, particularly around funding opportunities, some of those that Diane mentioned in her presentation. But it actually goes agency down to department level from the state and federal program, and then provides a grid. It's an easy one-sheeter of whether the money's for planning or broadband deployment or device purchase or whatever is needed or questioned. So I encourage you to go to goldenstateconnect.org and look at that resource. Similarly, from an information sharing point of view, we're looking to establish a speaker series, kind of something along the lines of a lunch and learn, where it would be an every other month virtual Zoom meeting where we would bring in speakers from outside of California and inside California who are approaching broadband in unique and innovative ways, and just kind of broaden our way of looking at broadband deployment models and customer service delivery of broadband, particularly with a rural slant. So look to that to come in late summer, early fall, under the Golden State Connect Authority banner. Now, the third bullet point there is really our most ambitious and among the most exciting. They're all exciting, but this one's the most exciting. It's big, and I will say the board is 100% behind us. We have a lot of good partners, and we are looking at deploying a new model of broadband service in California on a wide swath of our 39-member area, and that is the open access, public benefit, municipal last mile model. So it's a mouthful, but each of those words holds a significant meaning to Golden State Connect Authority. So I want to set aside open access for a minute and just mention that the public benefit aspect of it is we really do intend to overlay public benefit onto this model in the sense that we'll bring services that benefit the public, either everything from free Wi-Fi in the park, as menial as that sounds, it's very important, all the way across the spectrum to early detection for fire and road safety and air quality monitoring. So those aspects that have to go to public health and safety, not just public convenience. So maybe we could jump to the next slide, please, Kathy. And I just wanted to talk for a minute about what an open access model looks like. And by the way, this is a model that is used across the United States, not as broadly known or put into action here in California, with the exception of very small footprints. The city of Beverly Hills has an open access model network. But really outside of California, public entities do have an open access model in existence and have for the better part of a decade. In fact, this was the public municipal open access model was started in the early 2000s in Grant County, Washington, and has subsequently kind of expanded across the United States. So what it mirrors is very much like that of an airport system, where the local government owns and operates the airport facility, and the airplanes that utilize the facility pay a fee for that, and we as flying customers also pay a small fee to utilize that facility. This broadband open access network is similar in the regard that we are proposing that Golden State Connect Authority would build, own, and operate this open access network, the infrastructure, if you will, the broadband infrastructure. We would invite providers onto that network to provide service to the customer base, and then the customers would have at their selection a number of providers and packages, price points, speeds from which to choose. We're excited about introducing this model because, quite honestly, as was discussed earlier, the existing way that California, up until right now, as we sit here today, has deployed broadband has really been very reliant upon the private sector and the market forces that drive their returns. And that's how they've been determined as far as what areas they cover. So Supervisor Callaway, your conversation about the Highway 4 corridor and Ebbets Pass and that area of District 2 that Diane showed on her map, where the density is not as robust as an incorporated city and the area surrounding, are going to be hard-pressed under the existing models to receive service from private internet service providers. So a new model had to be conceived of and brought into the market, and that's what we've proposed to do here with Golden State Connect Authority. I will mention, before we leave the slide and go to the next, that we've developed a great partnership, a great network and support system over the last year and a half as we've been working toward the development of this model. It is modeled after, and we are relying on the knowledge and lessons learned from Utopia Fiber, which is the largest open access public benefit last mile fiber to the address broadband system in the United States at present. And it's located in the state of Utah. Their model is one that we have done a deep dive into, and actually in the first week of March of 2020, in a pre-COVID world, we spent 3 days with the Utopia Fiber leadership, and they opened everything up to us. And quite honestly, sitting at the airport on our return trip, after spending 3 days there, we said, this is something that we can do. With a few tweaks and some assistance, we can make this work. And I'm happy to say that in that intervening period of time from March of 2020 and that first visit, we've built a very strong external strategic finance team who has deployed bonds for the funding of such a network. And SB 156, if you go to the next slide, actually has helped us considerably. If there is to be a silver lining at all coming out of COVID, it is most certainly the attention that was called to what I would call the digital chasm that exists between those that have access to broadband and those that don't. And policymakers at the federal and state level have reacted to that awareness, shall we say. And in California, last summer, the governor signed SB 156, and it was historic not only for the level of investment. You can see some of the dollar amounts that were included in SB 156 there on the slide, but also for the non-monetary elements that it included as well. And for the first time in statute within SB 156, local governments were allowed to own, operate, and maintain municipal broadband networks, specifically counties. Counties had not heretofore been named in statute as being able to do so. So we were able to get that language included in SB 156, which opened the door, quite honestly, for a big step forward for the formation of Golden State Connect Authority. Also, and Diane alluded to this, but the creation of the Loan Loss Reserve Fund is something that was very important to Golden State Connect Authority and the manner in which we intend to finance this infrastructure. So if I could take just a minute and talk very high level about what the model looks like, the finance model, is Golden State Connect Authority, being a joint powers authority, will issue bonds on behalf of an identified project area. Those bonds will be purchased by private investors, so we will deploy private dollars to put that broadband infrastructure in the ground or on a pole if needed, but ideally underground, to deliver fiber to the address. This is our priority, with the understanding that not all areas will receive fiber to the address. In some cases, we will need to deploy other types of technology, but it will be connected to a very robust state-of-the-art fiber backhaul where that is necessary. So that private investment comes in. The reason that loan loss reserve is so important is in the Utah model, every jurisdiction in which Utopia Fiber does a project as a project area, that local government is required to pledge some form of franchise tax revenue. And this is the element of the Utopia model where at the airport that day we talked about there's no way that we can come home and say to our local governments, please, to your point, Supervisor Callaway, please pledge some revenue so that we can make this happen for you. So we started working back in March of 2020 very closely with the CPUC to identify alternative sources of funding that could be utilized for that securitization of the bond issuance. And thus, as we sit here today, we have the establishment of the Loan Loss Reserve Fund under SB 156, and it's initially seeded with $750 million. So we will, once the rulemaking is completed for SB 1, for the Loan Loss Reserve, which is anticipated to be in Q1 of next year, Golden State Connect Authority intends to utilize those loan loss reserve funds. We will apply for and receive some of those funds, and then we will issue bonds utilizing that loan loss reserve fund as the security and bring those private dollars in to finance our broadband network. Now, that being said, not all of these networks, as we've discussed this morning and you saw on Diane's slides, are financeable completely. Some will require some form of assistance or subsidy to reach the far areas of our member counties. So that's where you can see up there the $2 billion that's allocated for last mile service. We being Golden State Connect Authority, will be applying for those dollars also to fill in the delta or the difference between what's financeable and what's needed to round out the entire project cost. I will say we've gone down the road quite a ways and on the analysis and establishing the business analytics by which we are evaluating where our project areas will be. We've done so in very close partnership with CPUC staff, keeping them apprised of our progress and the factors that are going into that decision all the way along, and as we sit here today, that communication continues. So we are looking at, again, utilizing that loan loss reserve and the last mile funding pots out of SB 156. We are also, as part of our business analytics, and Supervisor Callaway, I hope this answers some of your queries earlier about the Highway 4 corridor. We're looking at areas for our initial projects that play off of or pull off of the state middle mile project. And at present, I believe Diane's information, her report was completed before the latest maps were released by the Middle Mile Advisory Board, which took place their last meeting in May. Actually, I think it was May 27th. And Highway 4 is currently included on the state middle mile map as being a state middle mile project. Now, I will caution you that those maps haven't been 100% adopted yet. They're working through with the Middle Mile Advisory Committee right now. But right now, Highway 4 is included on the state middle mile project. So I hope that's good news. Another little bit of information just to share with you is that last mile fund that's also included in SB 156 can be utilized for middle mile projects on their way to deliver last mile service. So if we were, and I'm not that familiar with the Highway 4 corridor area yet, and all of those areas that will pull off, but if there's an extension of middle mile that is needed to get to a last mile service delivery area within Calaveras County, those last mile dollars in what's known as the federal fund last mile account could also be tapped for that utilization. So stay tuned, more to come, but right now it's good news. And I will say, between the map that Diane showed was developed and where we sit today, the reason Highway 4 is in there is due in large part to tremendous amount of feedback from local governments such as yourselves, and Alpine County, I know, was vociferous in their desire to have Highway 4 included, and that effort has been rewarded at present. So again, the final map hasn't been approved, but it is in there at present. So more to come on that. The last slide I have is, and you'll see down at the bottom of this slide, I've highlighted in blue on the two columns there, $50 million for the local agency technical assistance program, and then similarly on the other side, what that will allow. And Kathy, if you could pop to the next slide. This is a slide that was shared with county administrative officers by our CEO, Pat Blacklock, about a month ago, I think, Krista, and it had the effect that was desired, which was Krista, picked up the phone and reached out to us immediately. And this is an amazing opportunity that I'm very happy to say Calaveras is pursuing. But under SB 156, the Local Agency Technical Assistance Program was created. It's modeled on an existing program called the Tribal Technical Assistance Program that the CPUC has had in existence for a number of years. But what's available under the LATA program, Local Agency Technical Assistance Program, is up to $500,000 per eligible applicant. And eligible applicants include local governments, tribes, and nonprofits in the broadband space, so COGS or rural cooperative telephone company, electric companies. The up to $500,000 is per a ministerial review process. So it's complete an application, submit it, your application is reviewed and thereby approved. It does not require, unless there's an extenuating circumstance, it will not require CPUC commission review and approval. It's approvable at the staff level. The unique thing about this, given our match conversation earlier, is these dollars will pay 100% of project costs associated with identified projects by the applicant that have to do with anything that falls into the pre-broadband deployment bucket. So anything before the shovel turns dirt, quite literally, can be included under this program. That was intentional in the creation of this program, and quite honestly, the direction to local governments as receiving a big piece of this. Now, I will say, of the $50 million that's been allocated, $5 million was carved off the top and set aside specifically for tribal use, leaving $45 million for local governments, tribes. Tribes can dip into the $45 million pot as well, and nonprofits. So if you just do some very quick math, $45 million divided by 500,000 comes out to about 90 projects, and there are certainly more eligible applicants than there are dollars available, which is why we have raised the flag on this one and really called it out to all of our member counties to get ready, that when the application window opens for the LATA program, that our rural counties are really first in the queue with their applications. The applications do require that you have an identified scope and budget associated with the projects that are proposed under your application. So if there's a hurdle, it's not an insurmountable one, but that is one that you do have to overcome. So again, I'm happy to say that Calaveras County is pursuing this opportunity. This is the most immediate opportunity, and the one that, quite honestly, it was due to open in April, and then April turned to May, and now we're sitting at the end of June. And the latest slide that I saw in a CPUC presentation had June/July listed on this one. So it is, it could be any week now that this program opens for funding. I will say on the advocacy side of the house at RCRC, our policy advocate for broadband, Tracy Ryan, my colleague, is advocating for additional augmentation of funding in this pot as a result of the current budget year trailer bills that are in process. But right now, what we've got is 45 million of the 50 million allocated that's available to local governments, tribes, and nonprofits. So that's all I've got for you as far as presentation, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Are there any board members that have any questions? Supervisor Callaway.
Well, I'm glad when I wrote the letter of support for Alpine.
Thank you for
Got
doing
me
that.
some help. On the landmark non-monetary items slide, it says local governments permitted to own, operate, et cetera. That's going into the private realm. So how is that managed? I mean, if we go in and say, okay, we want to have open access in all of our parks, and we're going to own and I don't know what that means. And why would Comcast or Verizon or why would they even allow us to do that?
Well, it's not really an allow situation, but we'll table that one for a moment. So I'll answer by way of giving an example. So the city of Chico in January of this year, the council voted and approved to form a fiber utility district that would fall underneath their utilities department. So they are in the process of deploying an open access. They're going down the road and doing all of the work that I just mentioned that Golden State Connect Authority has done on identifying a model. They've also identified the open access public benefit municipal model, and they are pursuing how that looks from a financial point of view, how they can finance it. And we've put them in touch with our strategic finance team to provide some assistance there. So that's, by way of example, one way that a local government is pursuing the opportunities that are now allowable under SB 156. Another is through the formation of Golden State Connect Authority. So our target, I should mention this, our effort under Golden State Connect Authority is to look at areas across our 39 member counties. Calaveras is one that we are looking at. We're in the early stages of reviewing, where we could come in, Golden State Connect Authority could come in and, working with the state, pulling off the state middle mile, extend, by benefit of that financial model that I described to you, that's a combination of private activity bonds and subsidy or grant funds, we could deploy infrastructure in that open access model. So it allows for JPAs to, which Golden State Connect Authority is, to come in and do that as well. It does not mean that you have to. It's just one tool in the toolkit that's available. So, and by way of background as to why the ISPs would allow or not, it's not really up to them to decide whether it can be allowed or not. I will say our whole pursuit of looking at new models was to reach those areas of our 39 counties of California in greater scope that are currently unserved and underserved. And the private sector model is never going to reach those areas. They're just not interested. And for no fault of their own, other than doesn't fit their business model. So we needed a new model. And this introduction of the open access public benefit municipal model that Golden State and the city of Chico and other jurisdictions are pursuing is just a way of reaching those areas and providing those services out to the far reaches, the more remote areas.
I believe, oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead, turn your mic on.
What are the criteria or conditions that you're going to be looking for projects?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to do a follow-up through Kathy and provide you a sheet that has our business analytics outlined. So it's everything from the density of the addresses to the geography and geology associated with a project area to available partners. Diane mentioned earlier PG&E. PG&E is just one partner. State parks, state libraries, schools are all other partners as well. So Scenic was mentioned earlier. Scenic is the California Education Network. They provide connectivity to K-12 schools and universities in California. So they also, under SB 156, were named as what's called in statute the third-party administrator for the middle mile. So Scenic, under a new entity that they have formed called, not to confuse everybody, but Golden State Net, they will own and they will operate and maintain the middle mile network. So there's a little bit of overlap there with the Scenic infrastructure and the state middle mile. They are in fact leveraging the Scenic infrastructure to extend the middle mile reach at the state level. So, it benefits us all.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jack, I believe you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
No, I don't, Madam Chair. I had a comment, and first off, I wanted to thank Barbara very much for all the work that she's doing with RCRC and Golden State Connect Authority. It is a pleasure to work with RCRC on this. I also want to thank our staff, Stan, Kathy, Krista, Marcos, who've been working very hard on this. As Barbara put forward, we need to be prepared to take advantage of a lot of funding, and we want to be in the queue for that. The money that comes after the federal funding account funds, which are allocated and are roughly $60 million to Calaveras County, if we don't have a plan in place, somebody else will come and take that money because it is a first come, first serve. To Maria's question about getting in the way of private industry, Barbara said it very well, and I will reiterate, it's a question of mission. The ISPs that currently exist, the Comcast, AT&Ts of the world, their mission is to generate revenues and income for their shareholders. Golden State Connect Authority's mission is to provide internet connectivity to our citizens in the areas that we represent. So they're very different missions. And finally, we've seen this before. In the 1930s, electric utilities were not serving rural Americans at all. In fact, the federal government came and offered them very large loans in order to go out and serve rural America. But it didn't make financial sense for them because they have to serve their shareholders. And so what they did was they came out with the Rural Electrification Act, which allowed rural America to form co-ops to bring power to their citizens. And in many ways, what we're doing with Golden State Connect is a similar thing. We're forming a co-op, or a JPA in this case, to serve our citizens. Now that means it's people are able to. It's a public agency. We're transparent. We follow the Brown Act. All our documents are out there, and so it's a different organization with a different mission. If the ISPs were interested in serving places like Arnold, they could. We know they have dark fiber there. They're just choosing not to serve those people because it doesn't make economic sense to them. But for us, it serves our mission, so it would make sense. So that's all I had to add, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other board supervisor topics?
Maybe Barbara or Mr. Garamendi can clarify for me a little bit further. But with this, let's say either Golden State Authority or the county itself would own the infrastructure. At that point, the ability for Comcast or AT&T to plug it in to provide the service to where those are is where the opportunity is for us to co-op with them. And at that point, there's a certain fee going back to, like, in a business model, from my perspective, that would give us an opportunity to take some money from Comcast or AT&T to the point where we could upkeep the infrastructure to continue to provide those services to those areas.
You're correct. Supervisor Garamendi, I'll jump in. So if you don't mind. So you're absolutely correct. Once the infrastructure is built, we will invite providers onto the network, and the large ISPs are more than welcome to join that effort to deliver service to the farther out customers, shall we say, or those in rural California. And just as the example that I gave of the airport, the airline will pay a fee, so the ISPs, being the users of that infrastructure, will pay a fee, and the fee that they pay goes directly back to pay down, in this case, pay down the infrastructure and provide the O&M expenses. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other board questions or comments? Supervisor Callaway?
I'm going to piggyback on that. The last mile would then be funded through like Golden State or like county? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
So what we are doing at Golden State Connect Authority is we would arrange all of the financing, we would deploy the infrastructure, own, operate, and maintain it. And what it would mean for Calaveras County in this particular model is that your residents and businesses would have a choice of providers from whom to choose. They would, I would say the majority of the addresses would have fiber to the address in Calaveras County, so they'd have a very robust choice of speeds from which to choose and at different price points. So in that model, in the model that we're proposing, we would do so in partnership with any local government, in this case to carry the analogy through with Calaveras County, through the consummation of a memorandum of understanding where the contribution from Calaveras County would be assistance with permitting, expedited permitting. You would be our partner in helping us plan where the routes go to ensure that coverage is provided to all, because that's one of our 4 key principles. So you'd be a partner in it, but not a financial partner. Under the scenario where Golden State Connect projects take place. And I would venture to extend that by way of example. If you, for example, and I'm going to say AT&T only because they're my cell phone provider, but if AT&T covered an area here in Calaveras and wanted to access some of the federal fund accounts through the CPUC when they become available, they may access those dollars as the provider and use them to deploy the network. There's no requirement for Calaveras County to participate in that financially or otherwise either. So in all of these cases that I'm describing with open access, I'm not suggesting that the county itself be the own operator and maintainer or financially contribute.
Are there any other comments or questions? I have a couple of questions. Going back to the open access system, how would that work with some of our isolated communities or parks? I mean, we've mentioned, a hub would be the library or park, or even maybe a downtown collective area that our community works at, but some of them are off of these maps. So how would we get that open access to these areas if we're not going to do, there's less resident to make sure at this moment in time to fill that gap up?
It's just a matter of the technology that's utilized to deliver the service. So they would still be part of the open access network. If they're, I'll use just an example, if we go down a county road and we come to the end of the county road and there's a home that's 10 miles down that road, it's not going to make sense to bring fiber, I wouldn't imagine, down that road. But what we may utilize is some kind of fixed wireless technology. So the fixed wireless technology would be an extension off of the end of that fiber line. And it would deliver you'd have the ability to deliver the same services, just with a different technological application.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. With that, I'm going to move it to public comment, if there's nothing else. Is there any staff questions? Dan, I see you, I just want to make sure I give you the opportunity. Okay.
Stan's chomping at the bit, no?
Okay, so with that, is there any public comment? I don't see anyone in the room, so I'm going to move it over to Zoom.
There's no online public comment.
Okay, with that, I'll bring it back to the board. If there's no further questions or comments, thank you for the presentation, and I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
Yes, great. So the purpose of this being an action item is to give us direction to move forward. We have some recommendations in the board item that talk about the invitation to negotiate, working with our service providers, identifying the projects, which, believe it or not, Stan's already ahead of the curve on that one. We've looked at identifying our 10 priority projects and moving forward with RC's recommendation and, what was the last recommendation? I'm sorry. Potentially, so one of the things that I've been looking at is a programmatic countywide EIR. I spoke briefly with county council and with planning, and looking at doing that at some point in the future, like El Dorado and Nevada County have done, would give us a huge leg up. Now, I'm not making a financial commitment at this time. We do have some funding streams that will be coming down, but we may want to look further at targeting that and prioritizing those things going forward.
Got it? Okay, sorry. Okay, so it's an action item. Is there any, is there a motion to approve staff recommendation? Jack?
Mr. Garamendi?
One last comment. It's been referred to as a generational opportunity. This whole program is a once opportunity. We'll never see this again. So with that, absolutely make a motion.
Okay, we got a motion by Supervisor Garamendi. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Supervisor.
What?
Huh?
A motion
For staff's recommendation of the action item. There's about 10 of them in the staff. So.
There's 4 bullet items.
4 bullets, yeah.
So they're continue working with RCRC on regional efforts, especially last mile infrastructure, identify 8 to 10 priority projects, follow up and coordinate with state agencies, including CPUC, Caltrans, PG&E, and others for build out, and then potentially pursue a countywide programmatic EIR. That we still need to get more information on, but I want to be able to pursue looking into that.
That's not a full-on commitment, Ms. Callaway. It's a
The
potential.
commitment for the invitation to bid or invitation to negotiate, it's not an invitation to bid. There's no formal requirement for us to enter into any agreement. It's simply reaching out to our internet service providers and finding out if we can negotiate with them what their needs are and get more detailed information than we're getting when we talk to them now. And that process would actually be covered under Diane Cruz's shop from NeoConnect under our existing EDA grant. Well, there's an EDA grant that the county is part of. So it would be under the Central Sierra Economic Development District EDA grant for broadband roadmap. There was some residual funds left over, and that's what we'd like to pursue in starting that process. So there'd be no commitment to the county financially.
Whose house does this come under, yours or Stan's, for being the lead on this?
Okay. So it's kind of a joint, we work with admin, we work with IT, obviously, economic development through the district. Stan's done a great job actually just penciling out quickly through a great conversation that we had with RC and Diane Cruz on where our underserved or unserved communities are and these carrier-neutral networks. So, but yeah, I don't know who the head would be. Ms. Von Lotta, CAO?
Yeah, we're, as identified by Supervisor Garamendi, yourself, Kathy, Stan, my office will technically have lead here, but the actual boots on the ground and quite frankly, point for technology is certainly Stanmore. So.
Sounds
but
like
it's-
a partnership.
Yep.
Joint power.
Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second on the table. If there's not any other further questions or comments, I'm going to turn it over to the clerk for roll call. Okay. Go ahead, clerk.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Aye.
District 4,
Aye.
District 5.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone that came today for the presentation. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Supervisor Garamendi, for your efforts in working with RCIC and Golden State Connect. I believe you're the chair of Golden Gate Connect too, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. So at this time, we're going to take a quick 5-minute to allow staff to disconnect and exit before we get to our next item. Okay, oh, you good? Okay, sorry. Welcome back, and we are on our last item of the day. So we have item number 23. I will ask, as a reminder, item 22 has been pulled and will be in the July meeting, first meeting, July 12th. So with that, please read out item number 23.
Item 23, action item, Administrative Office, direct staff to work with Board Chair to provide an endorsement and quote to Congressman Tom McClintock regarding the Save Our Sequoias Act.
So with that, I'm going to move it over to the CAO, Ms. Von Laude.
Chair Fallendorf, members of the board. So I believe you were contacted by Representative McClintock's office with respect to a request for an endorsement and a quote of the Save Our Sequoias Act. This act is, for example, big trees. It has many sequoias in it, but it's for sequoia groves. And the idea behind this bill is to present a model that would allow for a multi-interagency coordination to address the sequoias from a scientific and other standpoint, and actually get eyes on them and try and prevent any more harm than these groves have already experienced. And with that, Stacy, can you pull up the two quotes?
And if I may, on page 8 of the bill, there's 38 pages. On page 8 of the bill, it is mentioned in section 1819, the state of California representing Calaveras Big Tree State Park. So the bill does cover state lands. While it is a federal bill, it is covering the state land. So anyways, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because that was a confusing, that is confusing with the title of this.
Oh, and I should also mention that these quotes were prepared in coordination with our federal advocate, Mia O'Connell, who is also recommending that we endorse this bill.
So Mia has been working with Kyle Campbell out of Congressman McClintock's office, and the bill is sponsored by, it's a bipartisan bill sponsored by McCarty and Peters, both from California. So the two quotes you have in front of you up on the screen is options that Mia has put together for us for consideration. It was not in the board packet, and I apologize for that. We were working over the weekend on this. So these are just ideas, and if there isn't huge modification from the majority of the board, I am requesting to work with Krista and Mia on submitting one of these for the congressman to utilize in his support on the bill in DC. Just another added to this, the deadline is today, unfortunately. So we do need to make a decision. It was a short one-way, but the congressman staff was understood that I wanted to bring it to the board as a whole to get the blessing before we submitted it. So I would like to end today with a majority support. Supervisor Callaway.
You totally have my support. Thank you for bringing it. Calaveras Big Trees Association has been actively lobbying for funding to protect the giant sequoias in Big Tree State Park. We've been, I say we because I'm on their advisory board, they have been doing some prescribed burning to save the giant sequoias. There is not enough funding nor staff available to speed up the 5-year plan. And if this in any way will help with the Calaveras big trees, I would totally support it, and I would definitely edit that first sentence goes on and on and on and on. But outside of that, is this going to be a letter to?
No, it's just going to be a quotation. We're going to be it's not in a letter with the quotation, basically, Congressman, on this date, the board authorized this endorsement for you to utilize on the floor. And Stacy and I can work on that.
That's good. It needs some work, but yes, totally.
Okay, so the two options, I understand, the first one does need to clean up. I think the congressman would like to read less words, for sure, but we want to give some teeth to the endorsement as well. Supervisor Stopper.
I'm in preference of short and sweet, especially on the Congress floor, so
Okay.
I would assume that's option 2.
Yes. Any other comments? And Gail, Mindy, I just want to make sure I'm not missing you because you are in the background.
No
Okay.
concerns.
Okay. Any other comments? And Supervisor Callaway, I'm happy for any feedback before Stacy sends it off today as well, if you want to look at it. Make sure that the periods are where they need to be.
And the grammar, yes.
Okay.
I know, style.
Okay, so we'll focus on the second paragraph. So is there anything in the second paragraph that the majority of the board feels they do not like?
I'm in favor of majority of it, but I see that it says Calaveras Big Trees Association, along with the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. I would like to add that in.
Okay.
I just trying to read. Right, it's a quote.
It's a quote being said by Dr. Vita.
It's a quote from the
Right.
president of the association.
Okay.
So what we can say, maybe is the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors is thrilled to support this at, per the quote by Calaveras Big Trees Association.
I'd like to see something like that because it kind of gives some exposure to an organization that's not the Board of Supervisors, because we always get it, they don't.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay. Then, this is action item, so is there any other feedback on that, on the second quote? Seeing none, then is there a motion to go forward with the
Yes.
second option that was presented? So is that a motion?
That is a motion.
By Supervisor Callaway, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Supervisor Toffenelli. Clerk, can you please do a roll call?
District 1?
Aye.
District 2?
Aye.
District 3?
Aye.
District 4?
Aye.
And District 5?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for your support on this, and I am glad it appeases District 3's constituents. Okay, with that, it's our last item of the day. We do have supervisor announcement. So what I'm going to do is start with Supervisor Garamendi on the screen. Is there any announcements?
No announcements, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Callaway?
Do we have a strategic planning meeting Friday? I have it on my calendar.
Friday.
Yes, we do.
Okay. On Saturday, the Douglas Flat Community Center will be having a fundraiser to help support the Douglas Flat School. I'll be there, thank you.
Okay.
That's all.
Vice Chair?
I have nothing to report at this time.
Supervisor Stop, oh, sorry.
Ben, do we have a Hardwood Advisory Committee meeting this week?
I believe it's Thursday. It didn't populate on my calendar, but I do remember seeing the email come across from Ms. Fowler. Yeah, so let's see, tomorrow, Fish and Game Commission meeting. Thursday, Central Sierra SEDS kickoff meeting in the morning, then special Central Sierra Economic Development District Board meeting at 10 a.m. following up the SEDS meeting on Thursday, and then a little bit later, our Hardwood Advisory Committee meeting, and then we'll see each other on Friday.
Just, a reminder, we do have, thank you Supervisor Callaway, we have strategic planning on Friday with board and staff. For the month of July, reminder there is no COG meeting, will be, the next meeting will be in August. And next week, there is a GSA meeting with, on the 27th, right? Unless that changed, okay. So with that, that's all I have to report. With that, we'll convene in the closed session. Thank you, everyone. See you in July. Yeah, bye.